Welcome back to Fuzzee D Tutorials. Dave here. Today we're covering how to secure your Wi-Fi internet router from outside intrusion, as well as what are some of the terms and why do they matter. For a discussion of passwords and online banking best practices, plus how to go about daily life on the internet safely, see our companion video. There will be a card with a link for that video at the end of this video, as well as a link in the description below. If you like this video, please hit that like button. If you find it useful, please subscribe and be sure to hit that notification bell so you know when they come out. Let's get into it right now. Okay, the reason I'm making this video, I got breached last week. It was my own fault because I got lazy, and when we got a new router from Telus, I didn't go in and do the stuff I should have. So I'm going to show you how to do it and what you need to look for. Most times you're going to have to use your browser to log on to your router. You should be able to do it over wireless. Certainly you can if you're with Telus. And to find it, you need to type in the address in your search bar up here, and almost every time it's going to be the same. It's going to be 192.168.1.254. Occasionally it'll be .255, but it's almost always 254. And then you need to log in. If you don't know what the username and password is, your username for administration, of course, is going to be admin. Your password is going to be the default password unless you've changed it, and it'll be written on the side of the router. It'll be on a little sticker on the side or on the back. So we're going to log in. Oh, actually, before we do that, I want to show you something real quick here. The first thing you should do actually is take a look and make sure you recognize everything in this area here where it says your home network. You need to make sure you recognize everything that's in that list. And if you don't recognize something that's in there, then you're definitely having people use it that shouldn't be. So you'll see here we've got our cable box right here, and this is our printer, my iPad, this is our TV, smart TV, and my wife's computer, my computer, and our two iPhones. If you haven't already, the first thing you need to do once you get logged in is you need to change your administrator password. So the first thing we're going to go into is advanced setup. Now it's going to give you a warning here, so go ahead and proceed, just unless you know what you're doing already, in which case you're probably not watching this video. Don't mess with anything other than what I show you, or you could be in for a world of hurt. The first thing you want to do, if you haven't already in the past, is you want to go in and you want to change your admin password. Now the reason I'm suggesting this is because the default password is written on the router, and anybody that's been in your place or a whole host of computer techs and install technicians will have that information. You need to change it, and once you've changed it, of course, then you'll have to relog back in. So now you've changed your administrator password. I want to show you a couple things here. We're going to go down to speed test. Now Telus has a speed test that you can do through your web browser. The problem is if you're on Wi-Fi, that speed test is going to be testing how fast your Wi-Fi is to your computer at that moment in time. By doing the speed test here through the router, that will give you a true test of your speed to the router. Select the one that's closest to you. This is the one you'll normally be going through for your internet router. And you can see down here where it says train rate downstream and train rate upstream. Now these are the maximum that your account is set up to handle. Now, as it happens, we've got the fastest you can get without going to a dual router setup. So we run the test, and it'll just take a couple minutes. And there we have it. Our test is complete, and your downstream, that's how fast you're downloading stuff, and we're at just over 75 megabits per second, which is right where it's supposed to be. That's our maximum speed. And we've got 20 megabits per second upload. Most setups, whether you've got DSL or ADSL, your download speed is always going to be faster than your upload speed, unless you're paying big bucks for a special account. Okay, so let's go to website blocking. Now this is for you parents out there. Now right in here, you can actually type in any websites that you don't want people in your house going to, especially your kids. And this means that they can't bypass it by installing something on your computer. This is done right at the router, and unless they get a hold of your admin password, they're not going to be able to change this. So this is the place to do it. Now that said, they could get around it on their phones if you've given them access on the phones to be able to change their settings. And most times kids are pretty resourceful when it comes to that. And all they have to do is turn data on when they're away from your Wi-Fi, and they can get it right through the cell phone. So there's only so much that you can do. So you would just put the web address in here that you want to block, and then click apply. And as you add ones, it will show them in the list down here. And we have parental controls. And right here you can actually put limitations on to individual devices rather than across the board for everybody. So if you look down here, you'll see here's our printer, iPad, the phones, whatnot. So you can actually you can set these as a child, and then you can set the individual device rules. I won't go into it in this video, but they're pretty self-explanatory once you get in there and take a look around. But I just wanted to show you what's there and what it's for. And now we're going to go to services blocking. Now the reason for this one is on any secure network, when you're trying to secure your network at home, you shouldn't leave everything open for every device. Some devices, they just don't need to have access to those services, and if you leave them open, it gives an opportunity for a hacker to gain access through the port. So what you want to do is go in and select a particular device. So I'll take the printer for instance, and you can just check, does your printer need to get on the web? Well, if you're going to do printing from outside the home over the internet, then yeah, it's going to need access to the web. Is it going to need, now FTP is file transfer protocol. Is it going to need to upload or download files to the printer from outside the internet? Probably not. So we would turn that off. It doesn't need news groups access, and it doesn't need email, and it certainly doesn't need instant messaging. So you would turn those on and then hit apply, and then it'll add it to the list down here. And you can see I've already got some things turned off on the printer, and I've got some things turned off for the TV. Now I wanted to note for you that for televisions, at least for ours anyway, there are some things that you need to leave instant messaging turned on for. Otherwise, it can't properly communicate with things like Netflix or YouTube for authenticating when you log in. So when I locked everything down, I couldn't get stuff to work for a little bit until I came back and figured out what it was that was blocking it. So benefit from my experience, and make sure you leave instant messaging turned on for your television. You can see here, for the TV I turned off the email, FTP, and news groups. And now the printer, we've got some specialized things that we're going to be doing with it. So I only turned off news groups and email. I left FTP on because it gives me a way to upload print files directly to the printer from inside our home network. I can do it anywhere from the internet. That way, if I'm out working somewhere and I need to send a file to print, I can upload it directly to the printer and have it print for instance, for my wife, so she can hand out something to somebody that comes by. That's just an example of what you might use it for. Okay, now we're going to go take a look at storage device info. Now, the reason that I am going to this, now I don't have one, but this is for when you want to attach an external hard drive directly to your router / modem for other people to use in the house, so that you can have a central storage location for, say, music files or movies, for instance. You could take all of your digital movies and store them on there, and then any TV in the house that's a smart TV could access it through your wireless network. So those are called an NAS, or network attached storage, and you can plug those directly into your router, and when you do, they would show up in this list, and then you can monitor it and make sure that it's got full access to it. And that's where you would do that. And now for the firewall settings. So this is the first thing you need to lock down. You want to lock this down even before you change any of your other Wi-Fi settings. And the reason is you don't want somebody being able to be in there monitoring what you're doing as you're making changes. So this is going to prevent them from doing that. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do here is you want to turn on or enable your WAN ping block mode, or otherwise known as stealth mode. One of the ways that hackers gain access, or even find places that they can access, is they have a program that will go out, search for IP numbers, and then test all of the ports. And it's called pinging. So they'll ping a port and see if they get a reply, and then they can try and access through that port. So by enabling stealth mode, none of the ports will reply to a ping request. So it makes it appear like a big black hole, completely invisible to them. And that was one thing, this comes from Telus disabled. And that was one of the things that I didn't do when we got our new firewall. I was sick at the time, and it just wasn't on my brain to do. Now, one thing that will come default as well is the NAT only will be turned on, and that stands for Network Address Translation. And you need to enable that. I personally prefer to set it on high security level. And this basically, it allows outgoing traffic through pretty much all of your ports, as you can see here. But it turns off all of the incoming ports except for the bare bones ones that you need. Now, if you have online gaming and stuff going on, you'll need to make some adjustments with this, but that will be done in a different area. You can actually pick the type of game that you've got, and it will automatically select the right ports to turn on for you. And the reason they do it that way is so you can come in, turn it on for when you're gaming, and then turn it back off when you're done gaming. Especially if you've been having security problems. Okay, so if you're a gamer, then you want to go to the Applications menu under our advanced setup here, and you would pick your device. So in my case, I would pick my computer here. And then I'm going to pick games. If the device you're picking is a game console, then of course you'd pick that, or for VPN. So you pick the category that you're working with. If you're working on your computer directly, then you would just pick games, and then you can select the game. So say you're playing Doom. And you can view it just to make sure that that's going to be opening up the ports that you want. We'll go back, and then you can hit apply. Actually, we'll go ahead and do that. It'll take a moment and come right back. There we are. And now you can see this is now on the list, showing my IP address and the forwarding that was done. Now, I'm not a gamer, so I'm just going to remove this. And the last thing we want to go and just double check on, usually the default mode is going to be set up the way it really should be. And this is for your universal plug and play. Now what this means is, say for instance you've got, like we have a wireless printer, like we've got an airport printer because we're Apple world here. If you want that printer to be automatically found and the drivers selected and installed automatically, you need to have at the very least your basic universal plug and play turned on. Now if you've got something that's a little more complex, you might need to turn, or you want to track what's going on for debug purposes, you might want to turn on logging. If you want to lock it down a little tighter, you might want to turn it to read-only mode so that you wouldn't be able to, say, upload firmware to the printer and update it. That may be a concern for you. So you would just select what you need to change and click apply. So the next thing we're going to go look at here is our wireless setup. Now if you're connected wirelessly, this is already going to be enabled. If you want to shut down your wireless internet, then you would just disable it and apply. Now the only problem with that is once you disable it, you would not be able to re-enable it with a wireless connection. You would actually have to take a network cable and connect your computer with the cable right to the modem to get back in and re-enable your wireless internet. The first thing you're going to want to do is, I mean, you don't have to do this, but I would really recommend it. The SSID, that's your service set identification. That's basically just your Wi-Fi name. So when you go to connect to Wi-Fi, if we go up here and we pop our Wi-Fi down, you'll see all these names. Now, if you've got a Telus router, it's going to come looking something like one of these here. It will be your default. And once again, because it's default, you really don't want that. So what you want to do here is you want to, of course, make sure that your SSID broadcast is enabled, and then you would put in the new name, and also you would put in your new password. Now you don't need to know what my password is, so it's blurred out. and then you can apply it. Now once you apply the new password, then of course you're going to get disconnected and you'll have to reconnect. Now if you change the password without changing the SSID name, then you're going to have a little bit of a process reconnect. What will happen is you'll need to go up, turn your Wi-Fi off, and then go back in and reconnect to your name, whether it's the default one or one that you've made yourself. And if you're changing the password on the same one, it's going to sit there and it's going to try it over and over and over and over again, and you're going to just have to wait a few minutes and let it do its thing until it finally says the password is no good. Now Apple, that process takes quite a while. I'm not familiar with the newer Windows setup. It might take a while too. So just be patient and let it do its thing until it finally gives you an opportunity to enter a new password. And then once you get the new password entered, you can reconnect, and then you can get back into your router and finish doing the rest of the stuff you need to do. Now the other thing that you're going to want to set up is your security, and you've got a choice of here on this router of off, which is what it actually defaults to, or WPA2, and that's just it's an encryption protocol, and once you've activated it, you only have one type. Now other routers have more features and you can select different types. You always want to make sure you've got the AES encryption. That's actually a military grade encryption. And now one thing I forgot to mention, it'll come default, of course, with this turned on. Use your default passphrase. So before you try and put in the new passphrase, of course, you'll have to turn it on to use custom. And it will also tell you as you're typing in a new password how good of a job you're doing at designing a new password. So over here it'll tell you whether it's low, medium, or high. And this SSID broadcast, basically what that means is if it's turned on, which normally you would want to have it turned on just for convenience sake, when you go in here and you see the names that you can pick, you can see those names because it's broadcasting that name. If you have it turned off, you wouldn't be able to see this up here, and you would have to enter the name in manually rather than selecting it from the list. Now that may be desirable for you. Now one last thing I want to show you is, so here where it says select SSID, I like to use a guest mode. So you can select guest, and then you can go in and you can either disable it or enable it. And for isolation, you want to enable that for your guest. And by the way, your guest, they're only going to have access to guest mode by using the default password. Oh, actually, since I did the update, I've got access to giving them a custom password. But I would just leave it as the default. That's good enough for them. And by isolating them, that means the only thing they can access is the internet. Nothing else on the network will be visible to them. And that's really the way you want it. So once you're happy with all the settings and setting changes for each one of these, you need to apply them separately. By the way, if I make changes here, then I need to apply that. I can't just make changes to both and apply at the same time. Okay, now the next one that you may want to look at, depending on your needs, is what's called WPS, or Wi-Fi protected setup. Now on WPS you can go in and require a PIN number in addition to the password for when something is going to be set up over your wireless. For instance, our printer, if I was to turn this on, then when I set up the printer to access the wireless network, I'd also have to put in the PIN. Now, unless you've really got some problems going on that you have to lock this down for, I would stay away from this. And we'll take a quick look at a MAC address authentication. Now, what they're talking about with MAC addresses is every device has a physical address specification. It's similar to a serial number. It was developed a long time ago for security purposes, and you can actually turn on MAC authentication. So every time a device goes to connect to the internet, you can force it to read that MAC address and make sure that it is the device it's supposed to be. That prevents somebody who actually isn't who they're supposed to be faking being you and connecting that way. Now, the only downside, if you want to turn on MAC authentication, you have to turn on what's called automatic steering, because we've got a setup that will switch back and forth between 5G and the 2.4G depending on possible interference coming in at the moment or other issues going on. So it can switch back and forth automatically between the two. And some devices that can only connect at the slower speed. So unless you have a real need to lock down your MAC address checking, I would just leave this alone. But if you do turn it on, you have to turn off the automatic steering, and then you have to go in for every device and you have to set it up and make a choice whether you're always going to try and connect at 5G or 2.4G. Now, 2.4G is more reliable, but of course the 5G is much faster. So if you do lock it down, then you might wind up having the odd problems. If you're in an area that's prone to interference, you might have to come in every once in a while and switch it back to the slower one. So this is why I wouldn't mess with these settings unless you have a real security need for it. And of course, here's your smart steering. So if you are going to do that, then you would pick your device, or you can manually enter the MAC address here, but most people are just going to pick the device, and then you would assign the speed to it. You're also going to have to decide which SSID they're going to connect through. Now we'll just take a look at status, and here's some things that you can go check on. You can see if you're connected both to your broadband service and through your internet service provider, and you can check what firmware version you have. So if you're having some issues with new computers, you might need to look into upgrading the firmware. So this is where you go and check to see what version you have before contacting the Telus website to get a new version of firmware. This is going to have your model number and your serial number, your MAC address, that kind of thing. And we'll talk for a second about your modem IP. Now, with the standard ADSL or DSL connections, this IP number can change. Usually what's going to make it change is when it reaches its timeout, or if there's some kind of an issue and you have to reboot your modem, or if there's an issue on Telus's end, they can wind up reassigning you a number. And if you're having issues with your connection getting spotty, you can actually hit the release renew button, and that will automatically detect if there's any problems and look for a new, faster connection and assign it. Now, if you've got a connection contract with Telus where, say, you're going to be doing web hosting and you're running your own web server, then you will have set up a contract where you have a static IP address that never changes. So this shouldn't ever be a concern for you. Alright, we'll go back out to our home screen here, and this is the screen you're going to automatically see when you first log in. And this is going to give you some of the information that we were just looking at on our status screen. Well, this is a safe area. You can come and quickly take a look at stuff. But that is it, folks, for this tutorial, and make sure you keep an eye out the upcoming one where we're going to talk about passwords and online banking best practices, how to go about your daily life on the internet safely. And there'll be a card showing up on the screen that will have a link to that one when it comes out. You're going to want to make sure to take a look at that one, as that's going to show you how to deal with security and online banking and your email passwords and turning on and using two-factor authentication for that extra level of safety. So if you found this useful, please support our channel by subscribing, and don't forget to click on that notification bell so that you get email telling you when new videos come out, and we hope to see you back here soon.